Hi everyone. I'm Rohit Kumar. I am WG'95, and I am the founder of Chapter Apps, which was incubated in Peter's UWeb incubator several years ago. Um, it's a SaaS-based enterprise learning and generative AI company. All the new work we are doing is now around generative AI in the existing clients as well as in new clients. So, Peter, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Okay, yeah. I am Peter Rellan. I'm actually ex-Oracle, and that's where Rohit joined my group at that time in 96, I think, or 95, I forget now. But that's how we met. We stayed in touch. He went on to do other things and then came back to my incubator. I had started that in 2007. So I've been running it for about 17 years. We sponsor only about couple of founders a year. We don't really do the YC type of thing. So we've had maybe 40 startups sponsored here. The first one was called Threat Metrics. It was a B2B software data play. It was the largest botnet detection system that was able to do zero-day protection because we kept track of every botnet in the world that we could possibly keep track of. Subsequently, I did shift to B2C for many years. Did a lot of work in mobile and social. Out of that came companies like Epic, Get Epic, which is essentially a Netflix for children's books, which has done well in US classrooms everywhere, K-5. And then Discord, which is still growing and will probably go public someday. Then, of course, Chapter Apps and Got It AI are some of the last incubees. And now I am focused in the future on AI entirely and climate change and education. So those are my interest areas. So, all right. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Peter. So I'll start sharing some slides. Let me know when you can see my screen. I'll just move this out of the way. All right. So the premise on which we started Chapter Apps.
With at the time that the three will not be very different. For Instagram, it's fine. Do you think it would be?
We can
I think I've got it. Yes.
Right. So Chapter Apps was built on the idea that students, it was initially student focused, then it became learner focused, that people want to get answers to their questions on any device. And the models, a decade ago were flashcards, just flipping through quick things to understand how to learn. But as generative AI came along, that actually was solving the real core to what people wanted. And I think that's where, as we started building out, we had built our mobile first LMS, we had a training management system. And when Got.AI actually launched its product, that's when we decided that we'll build a custom generative AI solutions company around the use case. Interestingly, when we pitched it to our customers, we started seeing very good traction. So what is Chapter GPT? Let me start with that. So Chapter GPT is a solution built around Got.AI's platform, and Got.AI's platform works on both open source LLMs as well as on OpenAI. Both the companies, as Peter mentioned, have been incubated in UWeb in his incubator. Chapter Apps has over the last 7-8 years worked with 75 plus customers across industries that include insurance, banking, financial services, and manufacturing. And most of our customers are what we would say are in the developing world at the moment. and that's where we are seeing a huge use case. We are also starting to see more interest, obviously, in North America. So what do? We build custom enterprise bots on top of a company's knowledge base. Most companies have a lot of documents, procedures, manuals, SOPs, brochures, product information. That was anyway loaded on top of our LMS. So for us, it was a very logical thing to say, we'll take these documents, we'll build a content pipeline, and we'll feed this into the bot. The use cases that we have started seeing traction coming in has been from sales, from customer service, and operations. HR operations is another use case where companies that have high attrition and have thousands of employees, they are really wanting someone who will compose proper emails back to users or responses back to users on various issues. So those are the 3-4 different use cases that we are seeing that are starting to gain traction. In addition, there is the goal to go beyond what Office 365 Copilot offers, which is, let's say drafting emails is one part that Copilot will help you with, but drafting presentations, notes, domain-specific, based on your knowledge base, business plans, and being able to really draft internal and external communications quickly. And I was just reading a BCG report earlier today, which said the highest productivity increase of 20% on average to 25% has not been seen since the Industrial Revolution with any new technology. And that's what generative AI is offering as the potential to every enterprise worker today. So it's about Got.AI. Peter, I'll hand it over to you. I'll just flip the slides based on your direction.
Okay, thank you. So first, thanks, Rohit, and thanks for all the help that you're giving to Got.AI, which is a more recently incubated generative AI company. We started it in 2020. Usually what we look for is some kind of a inflection point in the industry, tech industry, to say this is worth exploring. And it felt like when GPT first came out, we really wanted to explore what could be done. So we sort of started this idea of an enterprise AI lab. And we'll just experiment with technology until we find the right use case. And then with Rohit's help, we have found the right use case. One of the key things, if you look at the second bullet, is we are working closely with NVIDIA. We are working on guardrails in particular. And I'll explain why both those are important for the enterprise in a second. The team is quite experienced. It's enterprise customer-focused team. They're not the typical YC since ChatGPT funded seed company. And we have a couple of customers working with Rohit. We have our own couple of customers. So I'll explain that in a second as well. I just want to pause here to see if there are any questions in the chat. Okay, so Rohit, there was a curious about measures of productivity. Is it being able to send more emails, or there are measures that actually show improvements in a company's KPI? So Rohit, you want to address that, or would you wait until I hit those slides on productivity increase? I think you are muted.
You're on mute, right?
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, let's go ahead. We'll come back in a little while.
I think we have a slide on what the customers we're working with are seeing.
Right.
So Jerome will come back to that. Yeah. Okay.
Should I move to the next slide?
Yeah. So one of the key reasons that people like to work with Got.AI plus Chapter GPT. There are 3, if this was a survey done by Menlo Ventures fairly recently, I'd say late 23. And, if you look at the enterprise adoption, okay, at the moment, it's pilots and a lot of excitement around, potential. But and so if you look at the ROI part, it's one of the big questions is people saying, will it really, and Rohit mentioned the BCG report. So we'll leave that out for a minute. If you look at the rest, it's a set of concerns that you have heard of, you've seen probably in various articles. We condense them into, so if, for example, lack of work bandwidth and shortage of AI talent would be highly correlated. Enterprise data, difficult to use, and data privacy would be also not the same thing, but correlated. Budget, huge problem. And I'll explain why that is a huge problem. So if you look at what we consolidated into, ultimately we address these things. The solutions that that have to be provided should be fairly simple for the enterprise to adopt. No code, low code is preferred. If it's a little bit more than a GSI is, oh, sorry, go back again. I think it went too far ahead. Low code, no code is preferred. That's the first point. Second point is, and also just workflows and understanding how existing workflows work and where do you insert GenAI. All that has to be factored. The second one is simultaneously addressing cost and the data issue. So, inside the enterprise, they don't want to do Bing search or Perplexity search if you've been tracking those companies. They want to focus on the data set they have. Could be sales training knowledge base, and that's what you have to nail. And secondly, they may not want to send the data into the cloud to an OpenAI or Google or whatever, or an Amazon. Certainly retailers are very concerned about Amazon. You're sending data to Amazon models. So we end up in a situation where they want to host them in some kind of quote unquote private way. And that has a lot of cost implications. It should be cost efficient. There are open source models now that are at least 10 times cheaper to run than OpenAI, but can accomplish similar tasks as the latest models, GPT-4, but at the same performance as GPT-4, but 10 times cheaper because they're open source and hosted on much, much more commodity hardware. Remember, the large amount of NVIDIA GPUs that are in demand, there are about 10 to 20 companies in the world that will ever pre-train models, which is to build them from scratch, foundation models. It's sort of like when I was here and the chip industry took off, there's a dozen companies that'll build microprocessors and microcontrollers in those days. The fabs, the design process, the investment required is very, very high. Today, the demand and NVIDIA stock is very dominated by everybody buying as many GPUs as possible to train the most sophisticated models. So Meta alone bought 350,000 H100s from NVIDIA, which is their last generation GPU. I mean, these are big purchases. So all the big cloud CSPs are buying enormous amounts. But what's going to happen is once the foundation models are built, we're going to move to inference, which is what's happening at the time of running the model, not at the time of training it. And that does not require the kind of cost structure that is today available. And so then the smaller models, very enterprise-specific tasks will start to proliferate, and they can run on much smaller hardware. But they'll have to be trained, or let's call it post-training, it's called, fine-tuned on enterprise data. The third part is that you've heard of hallucinations. It was the Cambridge's word of the year in 2023, Cambridge Dictionary. It is everywhere. And so there's a lot of trust and safety issues. You've seen lots of articles, I'm sure. So let's be aware that these are the three main problems that we solve. And that's why enterprises start to like what Rohit is doing with our technology. Okay, Now let's get into some metrics that people were asking about. So first of all, there is a use case called RAG. We are focused on chatbots and copilots or any other applications you want to build using the technology. But at the moment, chatbots, copilots are very popular. And basically, there's a product we have called AutoRag. It's not a general purpose product to ask questions about, who won what medal in the Olympics in 1938 or whatever. It's much more about, given an enterprise data set, can you bring in all that data and deliver really good performance on it? By the way, GPT-4, which is OpenAI's latest model, does have this capability to bring in enterprise data and do this. We've benchmarked it, and we're 12x cheaper. Why? Because we run it on a much smaller open source model from a company called Mistral. And they have an open source model you can fine tune for this task. What it really does is before the model generates anything, it will bring in the right data sources, the articles or the PDFs into the model at runtime, and then it'll answer your question. So that improves performance a lot. And the second one is accuracy. We've demonstrated now better than human accuracy on the results of these models using our guardrails. There's a model, it's actually called a truth checker, and it's an independent verifier. Think of your CFO and then your auditor. So this is our model that actually looks at the output of whatever the Copilot model is generating and independently verifies before sending it to the user whether it was grounded in the article's knowledge base. And the reason an independent verifier is very useful is that it is actually trained just on that one task. It's not a general purpose model, just like an auditor, right? They're very good at that. They're not your HR people. They're not your marketing people. This is what they do. So this is, again, using a smaller model, doesn't add a lot of latency. So you can put it in the real-time check before you send a result to the end user, and the Copilot will now make sure that it's very accurate. And the last part is a product that takes generative AI and works through more of a task. You've heard of agents. So a virtual agent that can go off and do something, update the CRM, bring back a balance and then do something with that. So, it's both knowledge and task oriented. These are the metrics we've kind of been able to prove, given that we've been working on this for 3-4 years with generative AI. So let's see, I'm going to pause because there are, okay.
Question.
What is your thought on the valuation of NVIDIA? I wish I'd invested last year about the same time. I would say the following. Anytime an industry takes off, and you've seen this with the PC industry, Intel, huge valuation. I would say Cisco, infrastructure, the whole data center is being re-architected. So obviously, the chip companies, that's where we start, work our way up the tech stack. And you will see the chip companies. You saw that Cisco acquired a company. Arista is doing very well. So Cisco acquired Juniper. So the networking companies are now getting into the action because data centers are giant racks of many, many GPUs. So the whole stack is being built. Now, I will caution you, if you look at all the major inflections I've experienced, which is the PC revolution, then the internet, the web browser, I was at Oracle actually for that one, the .com, I was doing a very large .com company at that time, mobile. Anytime a new stack comes along, tech stack, there are two dynamics at play. Is there a killer app? Because the industry on the supply side will definitely invest, because that's what VCs do, that's what strategic companies do on a new sort of cycle. But if the demand side doesn't pick it up. So I would tell you the PC revolution occurred on the back of Excel. Everybody knows that. Lotus 1, 2, 3 Excel. And then, of course, the whole Office suite and then Windows and all that. But I would say without Excel, it would have been tough. Web browser clearly, drove search, software miracle, right? So there was a huge killer app for the web browser. In .com, you saw that commerce and a lot of other companies suffered because commerce was assumed to be the killer app of .com, but it didn't work out. So if the killer, and then mobile, when the smartphone came, I would tell you, because I was involved, the first game for the iPhone was built at our incubator. The iPhone and the iPad arrived in very big padlocked, boxes. They were chained to load-bearing beams and 100-page NDAs from Steve Jobs. Building those games was not easy in those days. But gaming became huge killer app for the smartphone. Not to mention it already had the music and phone calling and SMS. So, huge. That's why it just had no question it was going to take off. So the question about what you think of NVIDIA stock is, look, for a year or two, the people doing training are going to order as many GPUs. The question is after that. So I think all the orders for NVIDIA are spoken through end of 24, 25. What happens after that? If you don't get the enterprise adopting, as I said, the market for the number of people who, train models will not increase dramatically. It will consolidate and shrink, right? So that's the question. Without a killer app, that valuation is, and that's why you see Jensen going everywhere saying software companies, they have huge, it's kind of what happened with this with the systems industry in the 90s. If Oracle and all the database guys hadn't come along, enterprise software would not have been a killer app, right? Okay. Next one, based on the need for smaller models. Everybody knows that NVIDIA
So I guess my follow-up question on that was that basically, just very quickly, is then are you saying basically that there needs to be a killer app? Do you expect there to be a killer app and what you have an idea of what that killer app is going to be? Or just
at the moment, yeah. I think everybody thinks it's RAG, retrieval augmented generation of the enterprise, because everybody knows there's a lot of dark data sitting around the enterprise that needs to be tapped into to improve productivity, right? Whether it's in Slack, whether it's in knowledge bases, whether it's in so the RAG is sort of coming up as the killer app. There is a guy at NVIDIA at the VP level whose title is VP RAG. That's how, right? But the smaller models question is really interesting.
Organisé par George Gianni.
Trend to smaller models, let me cover that real quick. The world will get ready for inference in 2025. So 2025 will be huge for moving to inference versus training, inference being running models, not just training them. Right now, everybody's just competing on who's got a better model. Once that happens, small models will take off, but NVIDIA is getting ready for that. They're prepared. It's sort of like when you're Intel, having the Intium, the Pentium, all the way from the Pentium down to the 8086. They have the whole range. The LS40 is their low end. Even the RTX for gaming, PCs is now being viewed for small models on local computers. They'll have everything lined up for inference for every type of model. And so I don't expect that to be the issue. I still expect killer apps to be the issue. Somebody was saying something, but I'm going to keep going unless you...
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so does guardrails work via another LLM or other? Yeah, it's a verification LLM. It's a whole new LLM. Today, there's a Medium article for those who are interested, which talks about OpenAI in 2021 published a paper saying training verifiers to improve the core LLM. And now it's big news. We started on this effort just for groundedness checking 2 years ago, but it's a technique, which is don't rely on the LLM on itself, rely on a completely different LLM, which is very focused on guardrailing. So it is a small model, separate LLM from the RAG LLM. How is AutoRAG similar or different from AutoML? Next question was, so AutoML is a little bit more previous generation predictive AI. So what you would go when you did AutoML is you go to Google and say, look, I need a model for turning invoices into PDFs that can be read easily, or turning invoices into data, Excel
Yeah, so
file.
let me just clarify my question, which is that I know what AutoML is. I'm just saying basically, is it AutoML these days is pretty point and click. It's pretty, very you go to different cloud providers, and it's pretty, and is the AutoRag that you're presenting in that kind of way, is it like that?
It is somewhat like that in the following way. One is it's not multitask. It focuses on one task. So AutoML lets you do many different language models, vision, speech, this, that. However, it is point and click in saying, I want to use Llama 2, or I want to use Mistral, or I want to use even OpenAI in the cloud, or I want to use this. So it's a little more, I would say, restricted version of RLM for generative AI. Next one is, who else other than Meta, Amazon, Google, OpenAI train foundation models, and how do they plan to monetize? Yeah, great question. Most of them will get acquired, I think, because what everybody's trying to do is to, there's two problems in the industry right now. The large companies are under antitrust review from the copywriters. So it is better to be a small company doing whatever the heck you do outside the large company, train up your models, even if they're somewhat poisoned with some data that shouldn't be in there, prove your metrics, and then you can get acquired because everybody wants the best model. The other alternative is so I will tell you the 20 companies. So obviously, you know that Databricks has announced that they have their own. Recently, Rika announced, this ex-Google DeepMind people, Rika Core, they said, is as good or better than GPT-4. There's obviously Mistral. There's Cohere. There are companies, other companies I can mention, but these are companies you would have heard of, other than the big guys. And, there's also sovereignty issues. So like, for example, there's a company called G42, which is a large fund / conglomerate out of the Middle East, which is saying, look, not only do we need data centers that are local, so our data stays local, we need Arabic-focused models. So they're training up a model called JAIS, which is JAIS, which is a foundation model that understands and, so, and they don't want, and India has Krutrim and a couple others. So every major country that has the funds is also developing their foundation model. So it's quite a bit. The monetization for any Falcon you mentioned is out of, I think, University of Dubai or Abu Dhabi. So there are many dimensions to why people are training foundation models, and not some will get acquired, but the ones that might not are the ones that are more sovereign to, data and model sovereign sort of issues. Okay, Falcon, somebody mentioned. I think that covers most of the questions.
Yeah, so
All
far,
right.
and we come back to the productivity.
Yeah, so let's come back now to the next slide. Okay, so I want to just play this video to show you what a guardrail actually does. Yeah, and tell us if you can hear if you can't hear it, it's okay. I'll talk through it.
Oops, sorry.
No, don't worry about the music. Just turn the music off. I mean, the volume off. And yeah. This is based on a real use case of enterprise data, one of our customers.
It's easy to configure the hallucination management platform for your use cases. First, make a single API call to start the process of fine-tuning models to your knowledge base. Behind the scenes, we load your knowledge base. It will be used to create synthetic datasets to fine-tune the models. First, we generate a list of user intents from the knowledge base articles. Then, we simulate user activity, such as having conversations with a chatbot. LLM responses are automatically checked for hallucinations. Responses that have hallucinations are filtered out to produce a dataset. Our model training pipelines use state-of-the-art methods such as PEFT, LoRa, and DPO to fine-tune models. We then distill the models to reduce their size and optimize them using TensorRT LLM, Triton's interface server through our NVIDIA partnership. Now the platform is ready to detect and fix hallucinations for your LLM applications.
So that's kind of the thing. There should be very low latency because it's inline right in the middle of your Copilot, running. And it should also be very low cost because you don't want to add a lot of cost to this, right? So a lot of benchmarking and working with NVIDIA to achieve these numbers. For those who don't, 50 milliseconds is infinitesimal because a model might take a second to generate a response. So this is less than 5%. And 98% plus accuracy is sort of better than human performance in most cases. So now you can think of, copilots that are actually also autopilots. So this particular use case is a large corporation, its line of business deployed a autopilot, 100% running on its own, not a copilot for customer service. All right. Next, then, so let's take a look at some of the customers and what they're doing. So what we just did is on the right side. It's in production. It's a consumer goods manufacturer, smart pens and smart books. I would call it, what are they called? Writing pads and books, or sort of tablets. Writing pad and electronic tablets is what they sell. They run 100% in autopilot for customer service. They have both the products. And in this particular case, since their customer service help desk pages and knowledge bases are all publicly available anyway, they don't have a problem sending the data to us in our cloud, and then we send off calls as needed to OpenAI GPT. So they didn't, need to protect this data. They're not financial services. There's an ongoing pilot on the left, which is a large insurance conglomerate, and they're the people who are quoted at the bottom. Now, in this particular case, they built their own solution for their own IT group has built their own RAG application for their own knowledge base. And the use case is agency sales. So, per country, they could have 10 to 20,000 people selling insurance. And a customer might say, hey, if I do this life insurance plan, I'm being offered a different one from that other company. Why should I take yours? And, their deductible is much lower or something like that, or their, term policy has this feature. Now, this is not for if you're training 10,000 people, you may have a sales agent who's great at answering this, and you may have somebody who's not. So you get sort of a large mix of people, and they can't answer these questions. Comparing a specific feature in one of their life into something else. So typically, your first call resolution would be lower, or your average handle time for a salesperson would be much higher for a question like this. And then whereas a copilot that you just type this question into comes back and goes through the entire, complicated, these are PDFs of competitors' plans, your plans, all get loaded up. And now you can actually ask complex questions across this huge database of documents. So in that case, it's just the hallucination manager because they are saying they're seeing too many hallucinations. And I will let Rohit talk about the middle one because that is a company in India that is a client of his, and it's a fascinating problem. Go ahead, Rohit, on that one.
Yeah, sure. So this company has actually 12 different companies, sub-companies, or actually different entities. One selling mutual funds, one selling loans, one selling unsecured loans, one selling health insurance, one selling life insurance. And these, they all, eventually the customer is more or less the same, right? They want to make sure that they get a single view of the customer, and due to regulatory concerns, it's been very hard to keep different sales forces. And so they want to basically get someone who sells health insurance be also able to talk knowledgeably about mutual funds. Or somebody who sells life insurance, talk about other investments that they could do, etc. And interestingly, there are other large entities, like, as an example, HSBC is doing more or less all of these. Wells Fargo is also providing all of these various different products under one house, under one umbrella. And that's where getting information for something that may not be my core, but helps my customer feel more confident that I am the right company to deal with because I get a single view of them, I recommend, and I ensure someone else follows through on that. So here the models are, we are using actually the customer Azure system and GPT. So their virtual private cloud, we're using the Got It AI Auto RAG and the Got It AI Hallucination Manager. And then there's a lot of work around ensuring that the content is, the RAG works properly on the content, so the tagging of the content, etc. And large volumes of content. They're going to actually, we're going to start with 1,000 people, but it'll move to 40,000 people using it as part of our learning app. So everyone has access to the app. Over a period of time, we'll have 40,000 users using it sometime later this year. But
And
it'll
in
be
this
live.
case, they're starting with GPT on the cloud because Microsoft gave them a pretty good deal on the discounts, but they've seen our numbers on the open source model, and they've already suggested that we bring that to bear when they scale it up. So, because obviously the GPT-4 cost will be high compared to 10x cheaper, right? So,
right, absolutely. So
there are
these
a couple more questions. Let me cover them because I just want to make sure we cover everything. Problem with synthetic. What about feedback to improve accuracy and hallucinations? And what about synthetic data training? All right. So feedback, yes. So for the consumer goods company, there's a cycle called active learning where you actually deploy the copilot, or in this case, the autopilot. Then you look at the results and you do these active learning loops to say, were there things I didn't catch, or were there things I should have let through, which were false positives? Once you correct those, in about 3 cycles, the system hit 99% accuracy. Now, doesn't seem like a lot from 98 to 99, but let me tell you, if you look at SLAs in technology or voice recognition, every percent is logarithmic when you get to the 90s. Like Siri is sitting at 93, 94%. Every percent after that is extraordinarily hard. So yes, it is 99%. Now, because of 3 rounds of active learning, which got really, it's the system then starts to converge to incredible accuracy after you pause, look at the results, and fine-tune the truth checker one more time. Then the other question is edge cases, synthetic data. It's a whole topic, but big picture, edge cases are caught by active learning. Same answer. If you have synthetic data training, it's pretty good because you can actually, synthetic data covers cases that are very bizarre, but active learning covers the rest of them that are not. And you're right. We have seen 98% accuracy, then you put it out there and you see 96%. Why? Because there are these edge cases, but that 96 comes back to 99, as I mentioned in this particular case. How do regulated organization companies use guarded services that don't permit calls outside the company? Yeah. So here, this is, for example, what Rohit and us will be doing with AB. So as a financial service company, we have a company in the insurance business we're talking to. There's a lot of companies talking to us now that Rohit has customers where they are saying exactly this. So as I said, open source model running on your virtual private cloud or your on-prem data center is supported by AutoRag and Truth Checker. Both are small enough to run on the company data centers. Our models can run on one H100, which is a GPU system from NVIDIA, because GPT-4 we know is a trillion parameter model, whereas our open source models can be 40 billion or 30 billion, or even as low as 3 billion in some cases. So depending on which one you choose. All right. So for the regulated industries, use open source that runs open source fine-tuned in AutoRag and Hallucination Manager. And I'm sure Rohit can answer the rest. All right. So if you go now to productivity, so sales costs, the two KPIs that we're shooting for in sales copilots is the sales close rate and, of course, the training time. So how fast can you make a salesperson productive? We all know, anybody who's been run a sales channel. That's a key metric. You know, is it 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, right? And secondly, can you increase your close rates? So how fast can you make them productive, and how productive can you make them once they are trained? Are the two KPIs. And in this particular case, you look at an AIA, you know, this is the large insurance conglomerate. They want answers. What is the difference between my product and my competitors, right? And boom, you get an answer. So now, in the training phase, this Copilot helps them get trained faster. And then if there are some edge case questions that show up that the person doesn't remember from the training phase, they have this Copilot sitting there when the customer asks, right? So we should probably have better data on this. But as Rohit said, for the people who have started measuring, you know, they're saying 25%. You know, I was sitting with the CEO of Infosys once, and I was asking him, so what are you seeing? Because obviously they're doing some implementation. And he said 30%, 35% in call center productivity. So he was focused on customer service. So look, I mean, we don't know the exact numbers, but the numbers being bandied around are, let's call it 25 to 40% is the general range I'm seeing.
Right. Yeah, and I think the key is that you've taken somebody who may not be even able to answer the question, will tell the customer, I'll get back to you, and you've lost the momentum on the sale. On the other hand, the minute you do that, it leads to more productivity in terms of sales productivity. Going back to the earlier question, when I had mentioned the BCG report, that was more about how quickly they were able to make the presentations, get the data sets analyzed, and be able to present a tighter argument on every slide. That's sort of now how we'll have to probably dig into that report a little bit more to answer that question. But here, in terms of what people are doing in terms of customer service and selling, eventually it goes back to either the customer satisfaction and the net promoter score, or it goes to how quickly can you close the deal and how can you sell more. And that's something that insurance and financial services companies are really focused on, because they spend a lot of money on training people, and this is helping them really get the real value out of it.
When you're thinking about, like, I'm not an expert at this, but it's not my area, but I'm thinking about a customer person, support person, or even a salesperson for that matter. If they're on the phone with someone, then they need that information like quickly, you know, right at hand. And you can't be like, hold on a second, and like, you know, typing, you know, to the thing. Whereas I'm wondering if, you know, as these get more sophisticated, you know, just having a chat agent replacing, you know, a person, or maybe front line, and then, you know, going to some fewer experts or something of that sort.
Yeah, no, that is a very good point. So I just spoke to a large client we're working with that is wants the system to be listening in on the call and automatically do a speech to text transcription, stuff it in the Copilot so that, yeah, that's the future, no question. It still is Copilot. You're not quite ready for a voice bot. Sometimes in sales, people like the personal touch, but it's a Copilot that is truly real time, right? No typos, a good recognition, and so on. Yeah.
Right. In other words, they're providing that
Peter,
time
Peter,
information.
it will depend upon the complexity of the sale also, depending on what you're selling. And that will
Exactly.
determine how long it takes to train that model, if it can be trained efficiently at all for cost effectively.
Yeah. So I think in this case, the complexity of the sale itself, the human skills are, you know, there. They need them. That's why these Copilot scenarios. What
Right.
you want is the access to the knowledge at your fingertips,
Correct.
not the Copilot sort of taking over the sales sort of process and intuition and all that, right? So I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead.
today I was presenting to a large global manufacturing company and their global head of customer service, and he was testing some of the questions on the bot. We had fed some of that data into it. So it's a manufacturing company, and he asked one question, it answered it with nice sentences. So his first thing was, it's composing it better than most of my people, when they write answers. And then he asked another one and he said, actually, I really like the way it's coming out, So
Yeah, tone and bot behavior, these are all actually programmable. Also, how easy is it to implement? This, I think I'm all, sorry, Rohit, this one you said, they pretty much said, if we give you X documents, can you show us what it can do? And when they
correct.
saw it, they said, wow, this just works. If you have a traditional knowledge base, let's say the traditional, Zendesk guide for customer service, Salesforce knowledge bases, if you have well understood, knowledge bases, it's literally point and click, no code, absolutely. If you don't, this is what Rohit is doing with one big client, is a convert everything to a canonical format called Markdown, which is a way to describe everything that might be in a PDF or everything. And there are some automated tools to help absorb all that, but you have to essentially curate the incoming data. Otherwise, you get, all these false signals. So there's some professional services involved if you have sort of a lot of non-standard documents, basically.
Yeah. Should I just show the video with the New York Public School District? Because that's a
Sure.
great
Yeah. Now we have a
example.
few minutes left and we're kind of, done. There was a customer service use case. Somebody pointed out Klarna. So in autopilot mode, what we're doing with the consumer goods, Klarna, the buy now, pay later German or European company, they have a use case where they announced about 700 customer service agents being replaced, which is pretty mind-boggling if you think about it, because that's full autopilot, and you're talking about jobs being automated away. And that was a famous study. Now, how they pull that off, is it a one-off? We'll see, but we certainly have one customer in autopilot, and they've seen reduction in calls.
So this demo was made, and it took about 5 minutes to build the bot, because all we had to do was ingest the Zendesk script into the bot. And so there are two different sort of scenarios here. Here, there's somebody who's looking for a job as an educator in the New York school districts, and they want to find out which school district that they want to go into. So here, you want to learn more about School District 75, and it's giving all this information here. And then you can ask a few more questions related to this. So
Are the questions below that, are they basically like prompters that basically like, here's some suggested follow-up questions that you could ask the bot? Is that what?
correct. Yeah, it's an auto suggestion essentially. So if you can
they're
click
pretty
on
good at
that.
that. Yeah, they're pretty good at that task of looking at your knowledge base and saying, it's the same idea of the synthetic data generation, right? So synthetic question generation.
Right, and we're showing this demo because there's no customer data. It's publicly available data, and like I said, it literally just took 10 minutes to build this bot. For someone who doesn't use Gora.ai and has to start from scratch, it could take a few weeks.
Rohit?
Yeah.
A quick question. Yeah. How much does it cost to implement? We are a financial services company. We have typically 1,000 queries a day into the call center.
Okay.
How long would it take us to implement the solution, and how much would it cost us, order of magnitude?
One of the questions is, just to answer that, Rohit does the solutions work. We have the core software license, and our software license pricing is per seat, typically of your Copilot, just like Microsoft and everybody else. So it's more a question of how many people do you want the Copilot for, right? Microsoft's charging $30 a seat, which we think they have the monopoly pricing power over their Copilots, but we would be probably less than half that, on a per seat basis, on a per month, right? So the question is really, what is the number of people? Because the license, and then the consumption, are you planning to use GPT or you want to use an open source model? You have to then allocate some provisioning costs for the systems, right? But do you have a sense of how many people you want to have copilots for? And then that'll give you, just multiply by some low double-digit number per month, right? I mean, low meaning double-digit, but not $30.
So $30 per month per person.
No, 30 months per bucks is Microsoft's price.
Yeah.
Google's price is 35 per month per person for its Gemini. I'm saying more like $10 to $12 a person, because we're not Microsoft, we're not Google, and we can do things much cheaper because they're going to charge you for their Gemini and OpenAI models, which are expensive. So we're 10 times cheaper on the consumption and 3 times cheaper for copilots on the per seat, right? Now, depends on where you are located, what your oops. Am I still here?
Yeah, you're there.
Yeah. Where are you located? Where is your company? What is your existing cost structure? Feel free to send that back to us. But we're trying to price this at closer to $10 per seat per copilot per month, so that, which seems very efficient because it's less than the hourly. If you save an hour per month per agent, it seems just like it's worth it, right?
And
It's
does
less
it
than
need
the
to
hourly.
be does it need to be English based or can it be French based?
No, it's multilingual. In fact, we use we use Mixtral as our as our the open source model, so it'll certainly be French capable. So they do a pretty good job with French, Spanish, English. AIA, the one we were talking to, we also did Japanese and Korean for them. So these are multilingual models.
We're doing Spanish with a pilot in Latin America right now, with a company actually owned by a Wharton classmate, and his team is using that.
We call it eFigs, English, French, and then German, Spanish, Italian. This is sort of standard for these models. They nail those ones.
So
and we have a language detection piece inside the AutoRack pipeline. So
okay. So who should we contact to discuss a proof of concept or a first?
Right. Yeah. Rohit is the guy. I'm a little harder to reach for you guys, but I'm sure on many WhatsApp groups and Wharton networks, and he's the guy implementing our solution while we focus on making the tech better and better. Yao Lee mentioned, so is that okay? Just contact Rohit. Yao, you mentioned is the multilingual sales support. Yes. So imagine if you've got a call center in the Philippines and you're seeing a Philippines answer as well as an English answer at the same time, then you have an issue that is being resolved by you're making sure that people are seeing it in their native language as well as in the language of the customer. So great point there from Yao. Sheetal, you're right. Productivity gains as you automate these jobs away will be in higher skill jobs. So today I can tell you prompt engineering as an enterprise IT job is where all the money is. If you can develop prompts to prompt these models to do certain things, whatever they are, like you are a great customer service assistant, do this, don't do this. It looks easy. It turns out they're very sensitive to every word you use in the prompt. It's English programming. It's still programming. So, you can have bugs in your prompt and it'll do weird things. So prompt engineering is where the next level of productivity is.
Yes, Peter, they developed a DSPY. I don't know if you're familiar with. That's the thing that actually goes from prompting to embedding space again, back. And they're trying to fine-tune embeddings of questions. So in this way, you are able to automate much easily. You don't have to tape all the time. So it brings back smoothness that is absent if you don't have that. So I guess DSPY is the future, right? So they have small modules that work.
Yeah, no question.
The idea,
the embeddings, I mean, there's a lot of work going on in the beginning of the RAG pipeline is basically data ingestion, which I spoke about, with this knowledge base versus PDFs. And the next phase is the embedding space and the vector database to put the embeddings into so you can do the retrieval when you search for a particular answer.
It was my question I had about the product was, when you do that, are you actually still using prompting for keep quadriles in check? Because this was a practice at OpenAI. Or you managed to, you are still like OpenAI. Yeah, okay.
We do both now. The problem with the prompting only for guardrails is you need a very strong foundational model. So let's say if you take Llama 2.
That's what I'm saying. So you need
Yeah.
emerging abilities or whatever
Yeah,
they,
so yeah, exactly.
and then
So
it
two-
goes. So my pipeline was like going to big model, get MVP fast, and then find open source and boil
Exactly.
down.
In fact,
So that's my
AutoRag does that. AutoRag lets you
okay.
do a POC with GPT-4. Once you know what you want, and then you want a cheaper, more cost-efficient, task-specific model, then you tell AutoRag, now build
Yeah.
me.
So the question was in your experience, because people are now, so some of
Yeah.
our friends who work in tech companies saying me that it's already worth going directly to small model, but this adaptation, fine-tuning of small model is still quite a challenging job. So I prefer
It's
to
very
go with big
challenging.
one.
No, that's why it has to be done
So,
without code.
oh yeah, and
We
then
do it
I'm
without
going
any
down.
code. And also you can't really use GPT-4 to do the fine-tuning because the license doesn't allow it. So you can experiment with GPT-4, but what AutoRag does finally is not use GPT-4 to fine-tune. I know we are running out of time. Yeah, George, and I have another meeting as well.
Sure. So do we have any other questions or other what we can do also, we are doing this with AI Studio events. If you have questions, you feel free to ask on the LinkedIn page of the event where we will be able to do some follow-up. And so
yeah,
maybe George,
this
if
would
you'll
be
allow me, can I try a last one?
yeah,
Okay,
sure, go ahead.
How much does how dependent is the quality on the quality of the questions? I have hundreds of clients calling us with very candid questions, and sometimes these questions are not perfectly phrased or perfectly worded. Is the quality of the system dependent on the quality of the question or not?
great question. So what happens in active learning is very soon you will start to see a separation between the unusual question, which the system may not know how to handle, and it'll very quickly surface them to you, which you then active train and teach it how to handle that. But generally speaking, misspellings, poor grammar are handled fine. I mean, they don't have a problem, generally speaking. But if there is a very unusual way to say something, then you will find it in that active learning, in that 1 or 2%, the tail, and then you will correct it. We give you the tool to say, hey, this question meant this, and then the system learns that. So again, it's a convergence over time problem, not so much a can it handle. But basic misspellings, grammar, poor quality English, yo, I have, like colloquial, they're pretty good at that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And Frederick, we can,
All right. Yeah. Maybe you guys can carry on.
We can certainly discuss that, and you can experiment with, if you give us a few documents that we can feed in, you can start checking it out yourself.
And thank you all. Great questions. Enjoyed this.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, George, for really setting this up, and really glad to see so many people join and with so many great questions. I think it's, I'm happy to stay on for a little longer. Peter had a constraint, but I don't. So happy to answer any other.
Rohit, I just
Yes.
thank you so much. This is Didem Ün Ateş here. I just asked for your pitch deck and demo video, if possible, to share.
Sure, I can certainly share the slides with you as well as the video. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Is there a website, Rohit, that explains if I want to share with some colleague what you do? Is there like a website that details what you do?
Yes, there is a website. If you go to chaptergpt.com, right, you'll find some basic information there. What I'm happy to do is, get on a call, walk you through it, send you some more information. And, typically what we end up doing with most customers is we say, oh, give us 2 or 3 of your documents that you have no problem sharing. Let's say they're publicly available or very typical of what happens. And we build a bot for you, and then we start playing with it with you to sort of scope out what kind of use cases you want to use it for, what kind of problems you're having, etc. So that's where a large part of the discovery sort of exercise, I would say, would be there. And then we move on to, from there, sort of defining some use cases that will have more documents over there. And then we use those. And then as we are finding with more customers, they are wanting more APIs to be integrated because they want employees to be able to answer questions or customers to be able to get answers on their specific policy or their specific transaction. Like Klarna doesn't do that today. If you see that video, it's answering just very generic information. At least on the video that I think one of the other people had posted on the Wharton AI Studio that we saw. So, so I would say pretty much if there are some use cases where you can get 70% of your issues resolved, those are the kind of documents we'd love to start with.
Rohit, how do you deal with complex documents? Because part of what I've seen, the accuracy of RAG is there's different parts of it that can be optimized, I guess you could say. And one part that is for optimization would be taking, there's like a thing about like a financial, right? A financial statement document, which is like complex, has different formats in it and whatnot. And there are some different approaches. What kinds of things do you utilize to tackle those more complex types of formats?
So, as Peter had mentioned, the markdown process, there is a services sort of angle to every project, right? So the more complex documents need a little more manual sort of oversight in terms of how the markdowns are written and how the key things are tagged. Because if it's tagged properly, it retrieves properly. If it's not tagged properly and you just upload the document, and we are seeing different companies as we not doing this tagging before they feed the documents. They think the automation from OpenAI solves everything, and this is the kind of problem they then get. So this is we were discussing a pilot with somebody to upload all their 60 companies quarterly reports so that they could start getting this kind of information. So we're still in discussions with them on that, but this is where when we told them that initially we'll have to just do this tagging for the set of documents and then automate the process for putting them in. Other questions?
So I think, Rohit, well, when we are done with editing the video, we can post it on the AI Studio as a YouTube channel, and then people who are interested will be able to contact you with all the details and everything, right?
Absolutely.
And, yes, and we also share details about those things on LinkedIn. So,
all right, absolutely.